Guys, are you not just loving this right now? I'm like, man, I am in school right now with my mentor, JLD, and man, he is rocking it right now. I have never heard that map before. I've never seen someone break it down nearly as precisely. And what you just said right there, do it till it hurts. Something that guarantees that you might be the best, you might be the worst, but you're the only one. And that if you persist, stick with it, and get better at it, it becomes your niche that you own. Hey, what's up, everybody? Kris Krohn here with the Have It All podcast. And I am so excited to share a very, very special guest. Someone, by the way, who has done over 3,000 podcasts. I think I got lots to learn from this man. Super big number there. You may have guessed it, John Lee Dumas, literally one of the most successful podcasts in the world. The dude gets what? Is it over 1 million views like a month on your episodes?
1.4 million monthly listens. You got it,
1.4 monthly like, listen, you've got things dialed in here. But I think, John, years ago when I learned about you, one of your books had come out. One of my friends and mentors, Garrett White, was involved with one of those. And I started just doing a lot of research on who you are as a person. I was like, man, I love the space that you operate in because you unlock entrepreneurs. I mean, you've interviewed so many of them, like the wealth of knowledge, by the way, that you possess from some of the top leading industry. You've had some of like the biggest and brightest, most successful people on the planet on your podcast. And first of all, just over the last, 7 or 8 years, you've been able to do 3,000 episodes. What a huge commitment. And I know the world's been incredibly benefited. So by the way, welcome. Super glad to have you here today.
I'm fired to be here, my man, because in the short time that we've got to know each other, like on a personal level, like, on the very enjoyable one-on-one phone call that we had, I've come to realize that you're living your truth, man. You really do have it all.
Well, I appreciate that. When I say that, people are like, wait, does that mean that he has the latest Lamborghinis and the mansions? And it's like, I think guys like you and I, we never got in the game because we were money motivated. We were motivated by a message that has changed our own lives and that we want to empower other people with. And dude, I think we should really kick off this episode. I would love to just hear from you briefly for a moment. Like, what is your mission to the world, and why have you been up to all the things that you've been doing, including this amazing book that's about to be released that we'll talk about in a minute?
My mission in the world is to share unbelievable content that will inspire others to live in their zone of fire, as I call it. And just to give a little quick backdrop to that, I was lost in 2012. Like, I was looking back over the prior 6 years of my life, and it was failure, it was struggle, it was obstacles, it was challenges. And honestly, it was a podcast. It was a podcast interview that started me on a journey that hasn't stopped, for almost 10 years now, because I just wasn't able to find my version of what I wanted for success. And, despite the fact that I was an officer in the U.S. Army for 8 years. I learned a lot about how to be a leader, how to have perspective and discipline and focus. I mean, I led, 16 men and 4 tanks in war in Iraq for 13 months. I thought, hey, after that, everything's going to be easy in life. And it was the exact opposite. Everything was flipping hard because I didn't have the right content. I didn't have the right knowledge, and I didn't have the right people around me in my life. And when I really understood the truth of that quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, my 5 sucked, Kris. They weren't bad
I think they did for all of us, man. It's like I'm hanging out with other people like me that are losing.
And they're all losing. And again, they weren't bad people. Like, they weren't evil. But they just weren't inspiring. They weren't motivated. They didn't want anything better in life. And I did. I said, how do I change my 5? How do I improve my 5? And that led me on the journey. And so I said, hey, well, if you can't find the 5 people next door to you, which you obviously can't, why don't I go online and find some awesome people? And then, hey, why don't I take another step and launch a show, even though I have no idea what I'm doing, back in 2012, called Entrepreneurs on Fire, where I can now interview these people and have one-on-one conversations and maybe learn from them. And that just started me on this journey to, as you mentioned, now we're talking here today, almost 10 years later, 3,000 episodes later, 100 million total listens later. And I'm still having fun, man. I'm still living in my zone of fire.
I love it. So this kind of brings up something that I really wanted to pick your brain on today. It goes in line with your new book that is coming out. You've published many books, but your first traditional book The common path to uncommon success is literally just barely. Oh my gosh, look at that. Do you have like a there it is.
Just got the copy in the mail, baby.
That is always, by the way, like as an author, the best feeling when you get the first pre-copy. But you talk about everything you did. You went online. You said, for me to find super successful people, I got to go outside of the people next door. You went online, but didn't you find that there's a lot of lying douchebags out there? Like some people are legit and real, and then there's a ton of people that are they're lying. They're lying for money. They're lying for fame. Like, how did you figure out who was real and who was fake?
There are so many liars out there. And that was my problem, Kris. Like, I came from the military. We are honor, duty, discipline. And that was my touchstone. Like, that was, how I was able to stay alive during a 13-month tour of duty in Iraq. And then I looked at people online and I was like, I don't get that. I don't understand that space. Those people must be scammy. They must be slimy. And there were a lot of people who filled those definitions for sure. But then, a little insight, I found this guy. His name was Pat Flynn, running a website called Smart Passive Income. And this dude was publishing his monthly income reports. And I was like, what? Like, he's publishing how much money he's making online. And he was showing the exact numbers, how he got it, how he made the money, and exactly what expenses he had. And he was this family dude. He seemed like a normal guy. He was cool. I listened to his podcast. He was like funny and dorky. And like, I was like, this is just a regular guy.
Was this the podcast that you heard that really set you on your journey? Was this like the podcast?
The podcast.
Wow.
And I said to myself, when I was reading some of these income reports, I said, well, wow, you don't have to be slimy and scammy. You can actually provide value and make money in this online space. And so I said to myself, hey, if I ever get to a place where I'm actually generating revenue online, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to show people how I made my money. And so we actually, fast forward, just crossed our 90th month in a row of publishing our monthly income reports. And every month we've had at least $100,000 of net profit, sometimes much, much more, but never under that for 90 months in a row. And we show everything on those income reports, fully transparent, how much money we made, how much money we spent, how many stupid things we did that month, because we always do stupid things. So
right.
Avoid
there's a budget. There's a budget on the P&L. There's this line item called stupid things.
Stupid.
my accountant makes me keep them below the line so they don't mess up my optics when I look at my finances. He's like, this is all of Kris's like hoopla, garbage, fun crap that no one else would ever be doing, but just Kris. Dumb line items.
But by the way, John, stupid is important. It's important because listen,
recreation, right?
If you're not doing stupid sometimes too, you're not getting outside your comfort zone. You're not trying and testing new things. And outside the comfort zone, that's where all the magic happens, brother. You know this.
Yeah, 100%. So John, actually, that's something I really love about you, even though I've only watched you from afar and then we've had our conversations. I just love how authentic and real you are. And I feel like today the world they have smelled so much bullcrap out there. And, 10, 20 years ago, it was like 17 years ago, I worked in telesales, telemarketing. And it was such an inauthentic era where people would say one thing and they would make these big claims. And, then the government and the SEC and the FTC tried to come in and like straighten people up. And I think more than anything, people today have developed a great BS meter. They know when it's going off. And more than anything, they just want to know, are you real? And John, you've got that going for you, man. You are super, super real. Really appreciate that about you.
I received that, brother. And some of the worst advice I think people can get these days, and they're getting it a lot, is fake it till you make it. That is terrible, horrendous advice, because people can smell that BS a mile away and they're repelled by that. People want you, raw, real, transparent, honest, genuine you. And so when I launched my podcast and I sucked, which I did, I was a very, very crappy podcaster. My audience, they understood that like, hey, he's not good, but why should he be good? Because he's just starting, but he's bringing on great guests. He's saying four questions and stepping out of the way and letting them provide value, letting Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin, they're providing the value on the show. He's providing the interview. So they saw me get better and they started rooting for me. And that's what people will do. They'll start to root for you, which is really impactful and important. But you're right, bro. I'm just a normal guy. I got a t-shirt on. I'm not even wearing pants right now because I don't need to be.
I believe you.
It's true.
Party below.
It's true. And just the kind of guy that I don't need it. Don't have anything fancy. I'm just here doing what I love, which is having conversations with amazing people. And Kris is an amazing person. This is what I love doing. And that's why I'm doing it right now.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, I want to back up further because you went online to start expanding your influence, and now you've expanded it to so many successful people, and you've learned how to hunt down and find the people that are creating real value, that are real. You know, the only reason why we do things like that in the first place, though, John, is because we want something. We're trying to achieve something, and I feel like when I talk to people about what they want in life, they don't really know what they want. They get stuck. I'm like, what do you want? And they'll like, tell me what they don't want. Or worse, they'll tell me someone else's dreams. Oh, I want the big house and I want to travel the world and I want to drive a nice car. And I'm like, is that real? Is that true? Like, is that what you really want? Or is that what you just see as popular responses from other people and you're just being a follower again? You know, you rose up, John, you became a leader. So my second question for you is, what do you think it is that people actually want to achieve in their lifetime instead of what they think they want to achieve?
To your point, Kris, there's so many people living in this world right now who saw Kris go have success in A, or saw me go have success in B. And there's like, oh, well, they're having success there, so I'm going to become a weak, pale imitation of those people. And they go and they do that. Then they wonder why they're not successful. Well, nobody wants a weak, pale imitation. What people want is you living your zone of fire. They want you having your big idea that only you have for yourself, understanding what your zone of fire is, and then living every day in your zone of fire. I mean, why else would you get excited about getting out of bed in the morning other than doing what you were meant to be on this earth to do, living in your zone of fire? That's what you need to get to. That's what you need to find. Like, that is the process you need to take to make sure that this quick blip of time we have on this earth is not being wasted. And listen, there's a great book so many people need to read, The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying. There's a lot of, I won't go through all 5, but one of them is...
I'm just watching my team right now writing it down. Thank you, Carson. Get me a copy.
It's fantastic. The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying. It's from a hospice nurse. For like 20 years, she spent the final days with thousands of people and wrote down what they said. Their biggest regret was that they didn't live a life that was honest to themselves. Like, they went to law school because their father thought it'd be cool. They went to med school because their grandmother was going to be proud. They did all these different things for other people instead of doing what they knew in their hearts they should have been doing for themselves the whole time.
Don't you think, though, John, that people have to start out that way? I mean, we are such late bloomers in life. I mean, we're the only animal on the planet that takes as much time to mature as we do. And we start with everyone else's dreams, and our upbringing is, and what we want in life is usually comprised of what we've been surrounded by. At some point, though, there's got to be like this awakening that says, oh, it's time for me now to figure out who I am. And I've never heard like anyone else use that phrase, zone of fire. That's clearly yours as an entrepreneur on fire. And I think you've done a good job explaining what it is. Could you just drop real quick just a couple of examples, name drop for me a little bit, maybe guess that you've had where you're like, okay, I had so-and-so on, this was their zone of fire, this is where they impact the world, this is where they get the greatest fulfillment. Like, give me just, who are some people that come top of mind?
I'll absolutely get to that. But first, I just want to just share exactly what you just said is so true. Like, listen, we are all standing upon the shoulders of giants. Kris is, I am. We've all learned from those people who come before us. That is the beautiful thing about becoming a human being and like being a human being. It truly is like this monkey see, monkey do thing. And we have to go through these stages, and we need to be proud of our scars too. Like those 6 years of struggle I talked about, they allowed me to build this media empire, those scars. So I don't look badly upon that. I'm not upset that I made mistakes and I copied people and I was fake and I like it was a weak imitation of other people. Like I had to go through all of that. So you're right. You do at one point have an awakening. My awakening actually ended up being a quote by Albert Einstein, which is, try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. And when I read that quote, Kris, I was like, I'm just chasing success and not finding any success nor happiness. What am I doing of value in this world? And the answer was nothing. I wasn't being of value to anybody at all, especially not myself. And that's what led me on the journey to say the next thing I do, I'm going to be a person of value first and foremost. Eventually led me to launch this podcast. But to your point, like a past guest that's like living in that zone of fire, great example, Hal Elrod of The Miracle Morning. This guy woke up one morning, he was broke, he was unhappy, he was unhealthy. And he asked his friend, what am I doing wrong? He's like, your friend's like, well, a lot of things, but tell me about your morning routine. And the guy had nothing for him. Well, I wake up and I go to work and I eat McDonald's along the way. Well, of course you're unhappy, unhealthy, and broke. You're not doing anything powerful with your mornings. Like that's your time to win. And so he developed this system called Savers. I won't go through the acronym, but just it's a lot of awesome things where he did every single morning at 5 a.m. Got up at 5 a.m. instead of like 7:30, right before he had to run out the door and go grab McDonald's and get fatter and broker. He woke up at 5 and he owned his day. And he did the exercise, the journaling, the meditation, the this, the that. And it changed his life. Not like overnight, but quite quickly, like over a few months. It just, everything started changing for him. And then he took that zone of fire idea that he had, this big idea that was working for him, and he shared it with the world. And now the Miracle Morning book has sold millions, literally millions of copies around the world, translated in 37 languages, just came out with a movie, which by the way, I was honored to be featured in because of my miracle, because of my morning routine. And that's just one example of somebody that actually taking a disaster of their life and turning it around.
That's beautiful, by the way. I think most successful people, mentors I've ever had, as I think back now, like if I were to ask any of them, like, how does your day start? They've got a specific routine. Mine takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours every morning. Everyone's got a routine for what they're doing to wake up their mind, their spirit, their body, make sure they get connected. That, Kevin Hart once told me, I was in Tony Robbins' house and he had brought Kevin Hart in, and I'll never forget when Kevin Hart said, you have to prepare yourself every day so that you can meet negativity with reinforced positivity. And I think that's the idea there, which is negativity will come even when you're not the one authoring it. And when it does, have you done something already that day to be ready for it? So thank you for dropping that nugget. One
question about your morning routine before we move on. Does 2.5 hours of that morning routine consist of doing your hair? Yes or no?
No. Yeah. No, but I have a YouTube video so I can show people how to.
It's coming from pure jealousy. I've been losing my hair now for 10 years and it's devastating. So when I see a person with just an amazing head of hair, I get jealous.
You know what? Jealousy is a two-way street, man. You're in Puerto Rico. Like you're in the 4% tax state. And I'm like, it's humid. How are you supposed to even be able to do hair down there? Right? It's like, I'm not confused why you're in t-shirt and shorts. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. I love that. I would love to get one more just quick example. Like when you think zone of fire, that was an amazing example, but I think it's also inspiring to hear. For just a moment, I want you to think of any other guests. In fact, think of maybe one of the most out there guests you've ever had. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Think about a guest that you had where you're like, wow, that is really different. That's really unique, but they're completely in their lane. Who comes to mind?
The person that comes to mind when you said out there guest, I interviewed Gene Simmons, the lead singer of Kiss. And if you don't know who that is, Kiss is like, they're all white makeup with black lines and their tongues are like 6 feet long and the whole 9 yards. They've sold 100 million records plus, which is unheard of, like the whole 9 yards. So I had Gene Simmons on and he just talked about that. He's like, listen, when I was growing up, I dressed up in girl clothes and boy clothes and costumes. He's like, costumes was where I was happiest. Costumes was where I was thriving. And then I started my musical career and I was like, the Partridge Family or like the Beatles. I was like short cropped hair, bowl cuts, just like in a suit, like singing. He's like, I felt so awkward. I felt so outside of myself. And I just said, screw it. I'm going to either fail miserably being someone else's version of what they think I should be. Again, the weak, pale imitation of other bands that are hypothetically successful. And I'm just going to be me. And he went out there and he recruited other people that had that attitude. And it was so weird. It was so out there. But of course, it was so different and unique and so genuine. Yeah. And people didn't flock to him overnight. But over time, he grew one of the most raving fan bases in the world. So iconic. And it is unbelievable the success he had because he knew what his zone of fire was, but he just was not willing to play in it. And when he flipped the switch and played in that zone of fire, watch out. He had nothing but success.
Well, John, thank you. And by the way, the reason why I was asking John for this second really wild example for those of you that are listening is because I'm setting him up. I've got a question I want to ask him. John has talked with so many different types of ultra mega successful people. I mean, people would trade their left arm to have the success of some of these people, sadly, because we want so badly to get out of our suffering state and finally be ignited by our zone of fire. And yet there is a commonality from something as bizarre as maybe the way Gene Simmons dresses, or the way, a morning routine looks for the miracle morning. And yet there's commonality there. And one of the things that I'm really excited about, that I'm looking forward to reading, is your brand new book coming out. It's called The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And for just a moment, break that down in your mind. The common path to uncommon success. Who wouldn't want uncommon success? And yet there is a common path, how Gene Simmons and Gary Vaynerchuk, these two wildly different examples of personalities, have gotten there. And John, I don't know if anyone could be a better authority on the subject. In fact, it reminds me the most of Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years literally interviewing and studying the most successful people on the planet to figure out what their common path to uncommon success was. And I feel in some way, that John is that modern day rethinking for us right now of what Napoleon Hill was doing back then. So he's written a book about it, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. I'm excited to read it, but partially because you lay out a map. But it's not like a 3 steps. It's not super simple and cheesy. You have 17 steps in your roadmap that you've created for producing these uncommon results. Can you, it's kind of a big ask because the book hasn't come out yet, but would you mind elaborating on your 17-step roadmap?
Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to cut that clip of you calling me the modern day Napoleon Hill, which is pretty much my favorite compliment I've ever received. So thank you. And I'm going to send it to everybody who ever interviews me, just to plant it in their head to use those words, hopefully at some point during the interview, so that everybody can start thinking of me that way.
I'm not confused, John. I'm not confused.
I love it. Let's do it. Oh man, that was so awesome. Thank you. So listen, over 3,000 interviews with the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Believe me, I've learned a thing or two. I took notes on every interview. I listened to every word of my guests. I was so enthralled by being able to be the mentee to every one of the mentors I had as a guest on my podcast.
Wow.
And I looked at it as a privilege. Like, this person's taking 20, 30, 45 minutes of their day to speak with me. Like, I am so in this.
And I'm going to ask them the best questions, right? Ask them
the best questions and shut my mouth, because I got nothing else to say.
Yeah.
And I just at some point said, listen, it's been 3,000 of these interviews that I've done of these successful entrepreneurs, not to mention I've been running my own multi-million-dollar a year business 8 years running, and we're talking net profit. So I've got something to share as well from what I've learned from them. So it's time. It's time for me to sit down and take all of the awesomeness from these 3,000 guests and put down on paper first, what are the fundamental principles that every single one of these successful entrepreneurs has in common? Because there's a lot of common principles. And I wrote it down. I cut out the fat. I boiled them down even more. I combined the ones that were similar. And at the end of the day, I was looking down at 17 core principles that every single successful entrepreneur possesses. I tried to get to 18 to make it even. There wasn't an 18th. I tried to cut it down to 16. Could not do it. 17 core foundational principles that all successful entrepreneurs possess. And then I created a roadmap from it. I said, I'm going to put these in chronological order. And this is the roadmap that Kris, that myself, that 3,000 plus other successful entrepreneurs, we have all gone down this roadmap to get to our version of financial freedom and fulfillment.
Yeah.
Period. And brother, I could have gone with a ghostwriter, and I'll be completely transparent. I interviewed a few, and I was like, at the end of the day, I got to go with my heart. This is my book to write. For 8 months, the first 2 hours of every day, I just wrote in this book 71,000 words. Every single word in this book I wrote. 273. We're talking meaty pages. I mean, this is a beast of a book right here. This is not a quick read. And if you want a quick read, go somewhere else. This is a 17-step roadmap, step 1 to step 17 to your financial freedom and fulfillment. If you think you can get there, quickly, if you think you can get there without hard work, you're wrong on both counts. This book will get you there the right way. And it is my absolute gift that I've been able to interview these 3,000 individuals and now take the best of what they shared over these thousands and thousands of hours of conversations and distill it down into this book.
Wow.
And now this book is ready for the world.
Well, John, I got to say, first of all, if for those of you that are listening, the pre-book launch is on. If you go to uncommonsuccessbook.com, you're going to get your hands on the very first copies as they enter the world. Or if you're listening to this later, go to uncommonsuccessbook.com and get your hands on it. I want to share with you just for a moment why I'm so excited about this. When part of my, by the way, I don't know what these 17 are. And I think John has left me on like this cliffhanger I can't stand. So like, and now I'm like, John, I got to know. And here's why. I know that I'm going to see myself through part of those principles, maybe all of them. But one of the things that has got to be in that book, I'm just guessing, is that I figured out the common path for uncommon success for me, which comes down to proximity, something John was talking about. Tony Robbins is known for saying proximity is power. It's this idea that one successful person can lead you to more success than lifetimes of working your job. And just for a moment, just take that in. One person can help you create more success than lifetimes of working. And so for me, my path to success has always come down to mentors, which is not a coach, by the way. A coach is someone that can run you through drills, but make no mistake, Michael Jordan, he's going to beat, his coach back in the day, and he's the student. A mentor is different. A mentor is someone that has already been where you want to go. And that's why they're able to show you the way. They're not guessing about it. If I want to be successful in business, with all due respect, I'm not looking for a professor of business that can tell me, educate me on theory. I'm looking for someone who, if I'm looking to grow myself into my company to $100 million, and I want to mentor with a billionaire, someone that has 10 times that success. And so I'm not going to let John spoil it if that's one of the things. But what I'm most excited about with these 17 are that they are a shortcut. And there's nothing cooler in life than getting a good shortcut that can compress time. In fact, if you felt inspired to listen to today's podcast, there's a really good chance that it either boils down to something you heard here that opened your heart and mind and inspired you, or it's because you need to get your hands on that book, right? uncommonsuccessbook.com, and just get a hack for what these 3,000 ultra successful people all share in common. I can't wait to read it because I remember, when Napoleon Hill gave his findings back in the day, life in the world has changed. Like, we live in a virtual world. So I'm pumped to get my hands on the book, John.
I love that you said the shortcut, because it is so true. Like, that's why back when I wanted to launch a podcast, I hired a mentor, because I found a successful business podcast host. And to your words, almost exactly, that's the person who is currently where I wanted to be. Like, so many people hire the wrong mentor. Like, your mentor is a person who is currently where you want to be in life, and anybody else is not the right mentor for you. So you need to find that person who is where you want to be. It is a shortcut. It is a cheat code to take a book like this, which is 10 years of work, thousands and thousands of hours of conversations with 3,000 interviews of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, and have it in your hands, literally. Download it in this manner. And, for those people that are old enough to remember Contra on Nintendo.
Yes.
Up, down, left, right, BA, select start. 30 lives. Guess what? That was a cheat code. And then you got to just enjoy the entire game and have a blast doing it. That's what this book is. It's the cheat code. It's the shortcuts.
All right.
Don't go listen to my 10,000 hours of interviews. Read this book.
Yeah. John, I'm gonna do something probably super unfair. Hopefully you'll forgive me. You gotta share just something from the book. Like, come on, 100%. Help me, share with me just one of these principles that they all share in common.
We'll talk as much about this book as you want to. Like, I am not hiding anything. I will literally sit here and read every word in this book if you want. Like, I'm not trying to hide. Listen, I'm not trying to have people get out there and buy every copy that they possibly can. Like, I'm making 20 cents per book. This isn't about you buying a book. This is about you getting the cheat code, the fast forward button in your hand. That's what this is about, because I wrote this book for you, for the individuals who know you want financial freedom, you need financial freedom, you want fulfillment, you need fulfillment. This book is going to get you there for that. So we will talk as much as you want to about this.
I love it.
I even have insane bonuses that we'll talk about later that I'm a little nervous about, because your audience is massive and they're action takers. And so maybe only the beginning part of those action takers will be able to get these bonuses, because we have to pull them, because I'm actually doing some crazy things, like shipping 3 of my journals to everybody's doorstep, which is insane. And I'm losing money in every pre-order, not the point. So chapter 1, identify your big idea. We've been talking about this, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but listen, you're likely not living in your big idea right now. And that's okay. Because again, it takes an awakening, like Kris and I shared. Like, we weren't living in our big idea, back in the day, but we found it, we've identified it. Now we're living our zone of fire every single day. And in chapter 1, I teach you how to identify your big idea, how to make sure it is like your zone of fire, and how to confirm that you are now going to be going forward for the next 16 steps with, maybe for the first time in your life, and with the right idea for you. Not a big idea. We're talking, we will get you to your big idea. And go
John,
ahead, Kris.
do you realize that like many books have just been written on this one thing alone, and yet it's just one of the 17, which I'm thrilled about, because I love getting people's perspective. It's so hard to help people sometimes recognize their zone of fire because it's right in front of their face. And it would be like trying to tell Gene Simmons that, hey, by the way, your fascination with costumes is actually going to lead to insane levels of happiness, freedom, and success in your life. And he would look at you like, are you stupid? Because to him, like, it seems unfathomable. People look at me and they're like, oh, Kris, look, like, yay, you make millions and millions of dollars in real estate. Well, duh, anyone can do that. The question is, what's the zone of fire for you? So the fact that you really walk people through how to figure that out is just, I think that alone is going to be worth its weight in gold.
Well, what's painful too is that there are so many people that are out there that literally are just one tweak, one pivot, one small adjustment away from literally having the same kind of success that you're having and that I'm having. Yeah. But that one tweak is keeping them at 0 instead of taking them to, 7, 8, 9 figures. Literally that one tweak. And so what chapter 1 is going to do is going to either, number 1, you're in 3 places. Number 1, it's going to show you that, holy crap, you are heading in the wrong direction in life. Let's reset. Let's start fresh. Let's do this with my big idea for the first time in my life. Or number 2, tweak, adjust, pivot just a little bit, and we'll figure that out within this zone of fire. And then you'll move forward in the right direction. Or 3, hey, validate. You actually are living in your zone of fire. Now let's go forth to the next 16 steps with confidence. But you are in one of those 3. You're in one of those 3.
Chapter 2.
When you have identified your big idea, most people get so fired up. That's why that book that's just about your big idea, if it's out there, it doesn't do people justice. Because here's the problem. When you have your big idea, it's a fantastic idea. And I mean that genuinely. I know that your big idea is going to be a great idea. Here's the problem. Other people have identified it as a great idea, because there's 9 billion people in this world. Other people right now have identified your big idea as their big idea, and they're crushing it. And guess what? That's actually a good thing, because that's proof of concept. That shows that your big idea is a really great big idea. So now, instead of what most people do is like, I'm going to go do this because it's my big idea. And they get squashed by the competition because they're not ready. They don't know what they're doing yet. It's just their big idea. So step 2 is the critical step that almost nobody does. And this is why everybody fails. Oh, I tried that entrepreneurship thing. It just didn't work. I had my big idea, but I got squashed by the big boys. Of course you did. Because what you need to do, step 2, is discover your niche. You need to identify the underserved portion and part and area of your big idea. You need to find the void that is not currently being filled within your big idea, and you can become the best at it, because you need to become the best solution to a real problem within your big idea. And sometimes you got to niche down once, twice, 3 times. Sometimes you got to niche down till it flipping hurts. And a quick example is when I decided to launch Entrepreneurs on Fire, I didn't just say I'm going to launch a podcast. I would have gotten crushed. I said, I'm going to do a business podcast. That's a niche.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of business podcasts. What about an interview business podcast? Okay, that's a third layer down, interviewing other entrepreneurs. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, but there's other podcasts out there. They're still going to crush me. I might be the 7th best interview podcast of entrepreneurs, but 7th best, that's not going to hack it. How can I be the best? Well, what if I launch a 7-day-a-week show? Every show was 1 week or every 2 weeks. What if I do 7 days a week?
No
what if
one's doing that.
10x? 0 people were doing it. What if I 10x everybody else's quantity? And by the way, I have to, because my show is not going to be good at first because I don't have any skills. I got to figure this out. I got to put in the reps to get better. But what if I 10x everybody on the quantity side? Since my quality won't be able to match up at the beginning, what if I 10x the quantity? And so because I did that, because I niched down till it hurt, Kris.
Yeah.
The day I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire, it was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. How can you be the only?
Guys, are you not just loving this right now? I'm like, man, I am in school right now with my mentor, JLD, and man, he is rocking it right now. I have never heard that map before. I've never seen someone break it down nearly as precisely. And what you just said right there, do it till it hurts. Something that guarantees that you might be the best, you might be the worst, but you're the only one. And that if you persist, stick with it, and get better at it, it becomes your niche that you own. Oh my gosh. Like, got to be honest, John, that was a massive aha for me right now. I love it.
The higher the barrier, the lower the competition.
Yeah.
I set a barrier so high.
Yep.
With my 7-day-a-week podcast, I didn't just have low competition. I had no competition. I built a moat around my business. Just like you've built a moat around what you do so well in the real estate world. People can't replicate that easily because guess what? If you create something that's easily replicated, you might have initial success, but as soon as you have success, there's a million people out there going to be like, oh, he's having success. She's having success. They're going to copy you and you're just going to become one of a million.
Yeah.
You can't be easily replicated.
Yeah. You know, John, one of the things that's coming immediately to mind is I work with influencers that are more offline and they want to go online. And they look at my 700 pieces of content a week that's getting millions of views. I got 5 million views last week. And my game is I basically said, I want that, but I want to spend less than 3 hours a week in the studio. And have all of these people supporting me. And so now I'm out there helping other influencers basically copycat my model and my systems. And you know what the number one concern is when I meet people? They say, oh, it's already been done. Someone's already doing that. And I just pause and think, do you realize that there might be 9 billion people on this planet, but there's honestly, truly, like, I don't intend to make this a God moment, but there's literally no one like you on the planet. Like your quirks, your personality, what you value, your priorities.
You're a snowflake.
Yeah, there's like, it's a snowflake. There's literally no two alike. And I thought that's where you were going to go, but you went even further. That is true. But on top of that, it really is a different game. And the game is keep niching down deeper and deeper and deeper until you can honestly know there's no one in my space, which means I've gone past that hurdle, that bar that is so high. And if I just persist and get better at my game, I'm a one of a kinder. That's amazing.
Well, thank you for that. Because I want people to think about the 9 billion people in the world. There's 9 billion people in the world, give or take a billion. I could be way off, but 8, 7, 9, whatever there is. There's a lot of people. And if you can honestly look in the mirror and say, I am providing the best solution to a real problem, enough people will beat down a path to your door for you to win at a super high level. This is the world that we live in today.
Well, and John, I think what you said is scary and true, which is at some point you have to make the decision. When I niche down deep enough, I'm going to be the best in that space. And that's a commitment that only that's how you become rewarded or even have a chance at huge rewards and success and fulfillment in that space of business. We've got time today, John, for one more. So you can either go sequentially on to chapter 3, or you could pick a fave. Like, what do you feel inspired and called to share right now for one of the final of the 17 steps to success, for a common path, but for uncommon results?
I'm going to skip ahead. And this book is 71,000 words. As I've mentioned, it's a beast of a book. Every chapter's give or take 3,000 to 5,000 words, which is pretty average. I got to step 7 and I wrote. And then the next day I got up and I wrote. And the next week I was like, I'm still writing chapter 7. I did not think this was going to be quite this beastly. By the end of chapter 7, step 7, 13,500 words is what encompassed this chapter. That's a business book standalone.
Yeah, it is.
And I looked at it, Kris, and I was like, you know what? This is actually the reason. This is the reason why I personally have been able to build a business that net profits over $100,000 every month, 90 months in a row. That kind of consistency, unheard of. With, by the way, 3 virtual assistants that are all in the Philippines with a $4,000 total monthly salary for my entire team. This is why, this is why I've been able to produce 3,000 episodes in a little over 9 years. This is why.
Man. Wait. Everyone, can you feel the buildup? We are about to experience John's Ring of Fire. John, release, my friend. Oh my gosh, I want to hear it.
This is my Ring of Fire. Creating your content production plan. I maybe am not talking to a person who is better at that than Kris right now. The fact that this person across the video monitor from me creates how many pieces of content, by the way, per week, did you say?
700.
700 pieces of content per week. He is a beast with his content production plan with 3 hours in the studio. Are you kidding me? That is why he is winning at a multi-million dollar level. That's why I'm winning at a multi-million dollar level. My content production plan is amazing. I am the first person to tell you all the things I suck at, which are a ton of things. I'm good at a bunch of things as well. But one of the things I'm fantastic at is my content production plan. It is next level good. And I spent weeks writing 13,500 words, teaching you everything you need to know about creating your content production plan so that you can win at the kind of level that Kris and I are winning at. And I'm telling you right now, I'm being honest with you, your content production plan sucks in comparison to ours. And that's okay. Listen, that's okay.
That is so true.
Mine used to suck too. Mine used to suck. And now it doesn't, because I've been working at it for almost 10 years, almost a decade.
Yeah.
And I'm giving this plan to you now. Use it.
John, I got to say, people write books for different reasons, for different purposes. And, recently a friend had written his book and he said, hey, I'd love to, I've already got it out in paperback, but I want to do a better upgraded, hardback version. Will you read it? And so I started going through the book and I started reading it, and I started when I was done, I was telling him, praising all the things that I liked about the book. But at the end of the day, I said, I got to be really, really honest, buddy. If you're really serious about getting your message out to the world, you're not a writer, and that's really apparent. You got to get a ghostwriter. You got to get someone that can help you write, because it was never going to land the way he hoped it would, because that just wasn't his zone. I called it ring earlier, but that wasn't his zone of fire. And I said, man, you got to stay in your zone of fire. And John, you certainly do that. Every time I spend time with you, I just walk away inspired and impressed. And frankly, the people I hang out with, anyone I hang out with, honestly, my standards are, I need to be inspired by the way that you live your life. So maybe I got to start just interviewing people in advance and saying, hey, do you know what your zone of fire is? If you don't, you got to listen to 10 podcast episodes. You got to read the book, Uncommon Success, or it's The Common Path to Uncommon Success. Listen, I just got to drop this one more time, because I've literally, Carson, pre-order the book here company-wide. I want everyone on our staff to have one. www.uncommonsuccessbook.com. And I can already tell, I think everyone listening now knows that this book is not a fluff piece. This is designed to give you step-by-step chronological path to whatever your big idea is and how to live it at the largest, most successful level. I'm blown away with what you've shared so far. Genuinely, thrilled to read the book. John, thank you for making that your path and purpose.
Listen, if you want a fluff piece, go read a Daniel Steele novel and do it. While asleep, you'll be happy. You'll have great dreams. You'll wake up. Life will go on. The reality is this. If you want your common path to uncommon success, if you want a 17-step roadmap that Kris has gone down, that I've gone down, that thousands and thousands of other entrepreneurs have all gone down to financial freedom and fulfillment, this is the book for you. And if you're one of Kris's action takers, which I know he has action takers in his audience, but oh boy, do I know, you're not going to wait till March 23rd. You're going to pre-order this book because I have 5 bonuses. Every one of them disappears, Kris. They're gone on March 23rd, and then you just get the book. So why not pre-order a single book? I'm shipping all 3 of my journals, the Freedom, the Mastery, and the Podcast Journal, to your door. I'm shipping these to your door if you live in the United States of America. For those outside, I'm emailing you immediately the digital copy of all of those journals. There's 4 other sick bonuses. You'll have to find out more at that URL where you can see Gary Vaynerchuk's personal endorsements, Seth Godin's personal endorsement, Neil Patel, Eric and Mandy, Dory Clark. Plus, you get the first chapter for free on that page so you can see my writing style. And you can see I don't pull any punches, man. I'm going to say that your content production plan sucks when it sucks. And frankly, yours sucks. So go check it out, uncommonsuccessbook.com, and start this year off right.
John, man, you've been super generous. I think I'm going to reach out to you for a part 2 because I just would love to have our listeners. Yes, I'm being greedy, which is share more. It's cool. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. Thank you for your generous spirit. It's amazing that we have this opportunity with you today because you spend all of your time on your podcast trying to extract as much knowledge, but you get to be here with us and sharing your knowledge and everything that you've learned and summarizing it and seeing the patterns and pulling it all together. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for, I always feel like it's a privilege to spend time with people who have had their awakening. They know who they are, what they're about, they're living it, and then you get to be in their airspace. And so, John, thank you so much for doing that for us today.
Thanks, brother. You're a true human being.
Thank you. All right. For everyone else, thank you so much for listening today to the Have It All show. Having it all really is about living in your zone of fire. I'm gonna redefine it for today, just that perfect way. And for those of you, if you want to get all those amazing bonuses, go to uncommonsuccessbook.com. I feel privileged to be able to help syndicate and get the word out for this. And then, of course, you can join us on the next Have It All, where we've got other brilliant guest speakers like John and others coming your way to really help you figure out in life, have it all in all the ways that truly matter. Thank you for joining. John, thank you so much for being here today.